Hello everyone, welcome back to Planet Conquer, and today I'm going to teach you how to change a crankset. So this is my old crankset that I've got, and today we're going to be replacing it with this Shimano FC A050 crankset. It's quite a bit better than the one that I've got, so we'll get on with that and I'll show you how to replace it. Okay, so the tools we're going to need, moving from left to right: an adjustable spanner, a ratchet, a 14mm head, a pedal tool, a screwdriver, and a crank remover tool. Okay, so the first one we're going to use, using our pedal removal tool, is to take the pedals off. So we start with this one. Then we move on to the one at the back on the crank arm. Okay, so the first thing you need is a small flathead screwdriver. You just pop it under the cap, which is just in a crankset, and just twist it to remove the cap. We then take the ratchet with our 14mm head on it. Loosen that off. Right. And that's the bolt removed. For the next part, you're going to need your crank removal tool. So we wind the crank removal tool into the crankset. Takes a little while sometimes for it to bite. Just depends how good your threads are, I guess. Mini crankset. Use a spanner. I've already got mine adjustable spanner preset. Okay, so it's not biting. I'm just gonna fiddle with it a bit more. Right, that's got it bit, and then use the spanner just to tighten into the crankset. Once that's done, we're now going to tighten the outer part. Put the spanner on this part of the crank. Right, hold very tightly onto the crank arm because this is very stiff and it can come back in your face. And we're just going to tighten it. You can even use the opposite crank arm if you like, it doesn't really matter. Just make sure as well that the spanner bites properly. If it doesn't, it's going to slip all over the place. That's it, and it should just come straight off, look. And there's your crankset taken off. Okay, so once the crank arm's off, we're just going to get a cloth. I'm just using a flannel, an old flannel. I'm just going to give it a bit of a clean, just to get any gritty parts off, because you don't want that going into your crank when you're putting your crank back on. And then I recommend using Teflon bike grease. And just put a little bit on the crank arm. I've used a bit there, probably don't need that much. And then take your crank, put a little bit of grease actually into the square. You only need to put a little tad. Right, and then that is gonna probably want to pull the chain through first, otherwise you'll have problems later. Just pull your chain through first. Probably wrap that around your smaller cog, and then place that crankset on. Once you've done that, you're going to take your bolt. You're going to put your bolt into your crankset. Don't worry that your crankset's not on properly right now, because the bolt's actually going to force it all the way back, and it'll force it actually on, and then you're just going to tighten that up. There we go. And then just keep it going until you can't tighten it anymore. One thing I should have said, which I've just noticed, but it's okay, is the front derailleur. So what I would recommend doing while we're at this stage, before tightening it any further, if you haven't tightened it already, then I recommend actually lowering the derailleur, because obviously this is a bigger crankset. Right, now the front derailleur has been loosened, and we can carry on tightening up our crankset. Do you think how tightest you're going to get it? Right, once that's done, you can re-put on your cap if it'll fit, which it should. Give that a tap. There we go, and now we'll do the other side. Okay, so for the crank arm, we're going to do the same as we did last time, so a small flathead screwdriver, straight in, push that out. Then we're going to use our crank with a 14mm head, hit it again. Going to take our crank removal tool, make sure the barrel inside is not protruding or coming out, and then we'll wind this into the crank arm. Once you've done that, wind to the back part with the crank removal tool in. Use your spanner. Tighten that on. It's going to be very stiff. It's not going to want to come off. Depends how new your bike is. If you've got a new bike, it won't be that stiff because everything's still new on it. But the older your bike gets, the stiffer it all gets because it's subject to the elements every time you ride it. And even when you park it up outside, it's left standing. should loosen and come straight off, look. Once the crank arm's off, just get your cloth. Like I said, I'm just using the flannel. Give it a bit of a clean up. Any grit or anything that might be around that could naff it up. Use your Teflon. A little bit of Teflon, don't have to use a lot. Take your crank arm. On the inside, part of the square part that's going to go on your bracket. Put a little bit of Teflon in there. Make sure that the arms are facing the opposite way. So if your crank arm's facing down, you want this arm facing up. If you have them both facing the same way, or one facing towards my direction, another facing that way, one facing towards my direction, the other facing downwards or upwards, and then you're going to have some problems. So you want them facing opposite each other, so either towards me and away from me, or to the floor and up away from the floor. Once you've done that, take your bolt, just freehand that in for a second. Once you've done that, take your ratchet, put that on like that. Right, and start tightening. You just got to get it to the initial stage first, because if you try and use a ratchet back and forth and the screw's loose, it'll just loosen it, then tighten it, then loosen it, then tighten it, and you don't actually get anywhere. So you want it so it bites first. So then as you do turn your ratchet, it's not loosening when you're going back the other way, and it makes the clicky sound that you can hear. More tight on that. Alright, that's about tight as that'll go. Once that's on, get your cap. Your cap then goes in. Slap it in. Just check it. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you put on a crankset, and then you just have to put your pedals on, back on. So thanks a lot for watching Planet Conquer.